to start off by learning some financial stuff. We're going to cover quite a bit. I want to talk to you just for a moment about this unit. We'll start off by learning about interest and compounded interest. That's basically what banks do. We'll talk about what an annuity is. We'll talk about retirement accounts. We'll talk about home mortgages, loans, and stuff like that. These are all things you'll likely come across in your lifetime. And one of the things you'll do is a house buying project. House buying project. So we will use Excel on the house buying project, and you'll also do a little PowerPoint presentation. Real easy, nothing too. But here's the thing, what I learned is that most people, you have to have a dream before you can make it come true. Does that make sense? You have to think of the idea. And a lot of you guys are young, and to be thinking about a house is a little early still for you, but if you get that vision right now, that'd be a lot better because the sooner you can start working on that vision, the more likely you'll be achieving that vision. Does that sort of make sense? So, some of you guys know we have 3 houses already. We don't have them paid off. About $600,000 or $700,000 in debt right now. But the point is, we have. The point is, you need money to make money, so to speak. And part of what you're learning in this stuff, and I'm going to do as much as I can. You guys are welcome to ask me questions. I want to share with you the secrets that we have in our family culture. And how did we get these things, and so on and so forth. Yes, it helps. My wife makes she's a chemical engineer. And that helps. If you go to college, you get a chemical engineering, you get a job. It helps, certainly helps. Going to college, getting college degrees help. At least in our country, we pay more money for people to have college degrees for some odd reason. Well, anyhow, that being said, please be willing to ask me stuff. I'll share with you a lot of stuff that I've learned about buying homes and stuff like that and how to get it. I'll tell you right now, the number one thing that keeps people out of home is the down payment. Because your rent payment is often equal to your house payment that you'd be paying anyways. There's a lot of people, like for example, the house that we have, we're renting it. And we're renting it for $1,300 a month. Well, that pays for the house payment. So the people that are renting it are buying the house basically in a sense for us. Does that make sense? So if you have money, you can make money. And so once that house is paid off, though, then the rent is extra money to us. Does that make sense? So it's like when you take $1,300 and you multiply it by 12, that's pretty much the additional income that my wife and I are making. Does that make sense? So, and how do you do that? Well, you have to have a house. So we need an additional house for us to live in now. So now we have another loan that we're paying. My wife and I are paying. So anyhow, a lot of the things in this stuff, this is one of the happiest things I teach as a teacher is this mathematics we're covering right now. So I hope to share some things with you guys. And please feel free to ask me any questions about this stuff, especially as we get into home loan stuff. And anyhow, we'll start off with the easiest stuff. This is basically what banks do and how banks make money. It has to do with simple interest and compounded interest. And what we do is we build these formulas into other formulas. And you won't have to memorize the formulas. I'll write them down on the board just like I did for the previous test. But you'll want to write them down for homework. Okay, so let's get started. Here's our lesson. Did I hit? Oh, we're on this. Okay. So, simple and compounded interest. Simple interest is what you do for a loan. And this is what you usually do with family loans. Like, my brother wanted to borrow $7,000 so he could buy a truck. So we just said, okay, well, actually in his loan, we didn't really charge a whole lot of interest. But usually what you do if you're doing family loans or personal loans with your friends is you do a simple interest loan where they're just going to pay you a couple $100s for the loan. You know, Well, if you want to calculate it, you use this formula. So go ahead and write it down. One of the things you want to get used to is what does each letter stand for, and you have to know a few things about these numbers. It's not like you just plug in any number, okay? So you have to know which number is which. So let's see if my pen's working. Right now my pen doesn't seem to be working. Is it moving? There, it's moving there, but okay, my tablet went to sleep on me, so I just need to wake it up again. But this one, for example, the letter stands for interest. Interest is like extra. So if I give a loan for $1,000, the person might have to pay back 1,100. The 100 extra is what we call interest. Does that make sense? It's like the profit that the bank makes when they give you a loan. And then this word here stands for the principal. That's the amount of the loan. Okay, I think my pen's working now. So let me get a cool color here that we might be able to see here. So this one, if you're taking notes, you want to write down this is interest. Interest. And this one we say, I'm going to change colors again. How about white? This one's principal. And I always forget how to spell it. The principal with an A, principal. This is like the principal in a high school, but I think it's the same principle you use for business formulas as well. And then this is the rate. Rate. Now rates, when they tell you the rate, it's always in the form of a percent. So one of the things you have to be in the habit of doing is changing the percent to a decimal. So if the interest rate, for example, is 5%, then you want to change that immediately to 0.05. Okay, these are things you learned in like 5th grade, 4th grade, whatever. Changing from percents to decimals, right? Percent just means per 100. Per 100. Well, if you think about this, per means divide. So it means divide by 100. So if you take 5 and you divide by 100, guess what you get? 0.05. Okay? Since hundreds are the basis of our financial situation with dollars and cents and so on, that's often why we deal with percents. Percent. Get it? Okay, so 100 pennies per dollar. Okay. Anyhow, you'll want to be in the habit of changing this percent immediately to that number because most people don't have this key in their calculator. They can enter that number instead. Now, this last one is, you can guess what it is. I'll bet most people can tell me what it is. What is it? Time. Time. Okay, it is time, but here's the thing. The time is always in terms of years. Does that make sense? It's always in terms of years. Okay, in terms of years. It's time in years. So let's say I borrow some money, $1,000, 5% interest rate for 6 months. So you know what a lot of people, idiots, would do? They would do this. You guys aren't idiots, but this is what idiots would do. They would multiply these numbers, $1,000 times the interest rate, 0.05, and you said 6 months. And so they put 6 here. And they just made a mistake. Someone please tell me what the mistake is. What is it? They put 6 years. You're collecting a whole lot more interest than you're supposed to be getting. If this is in terms of years and I did 6 months, what number should I have in there? 0.5, because 6 is half of a year. You see? So that was the mistake. You have to watch out for that always with financial formulas. Does that make sense? You have to watch out for that. If you have days or months, you have to convert it to years. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you're using the formula incorrectly. These all numbers are being multiplied. So let's just look at an example real quick. Okay, so I tell you here what they all stand for. R is often referred to as annual percent rate. Okay, So we'll see how to adjust things. These will work out very nicely once you do a few things. One thing nice about the financial chapter is that it's all formulas. All you do is plug numbers in, and then you figure out how to do it in your calculator. But the key difficulty is knowing which formula to use and what numbers to put in. And it's just like this time thing. You have to know what number to plug in that formula. Okay, so this is an example. We want to find the simple interest. Okay, simple interest. Pay attention to what words we're using because that will help you determine which formula to use. We're using simple interest. I recommend, at least in the beginning, to always write the formula down. So the simple interest, according to our formula, is the principal times the rate times the time. Okay, so for this problem here, well, this is our principal. You got to be able to read the problem and find out which one's what. The loan amount, the amount that you're getting, that's your principal. That's often what you take out on like the very first day at the bank. As soon as the bank gives you money, they're going to start charging you interest though. So what we want to do is figure out, well, if you get a $25,000 loan and you're going to pay back 7% interest, you're going to pay it back in 9 months. How much interest does the bank get off of you for doing that? Yeah.
So you know how, let's say you buy a car,
Yeah.
you want a good down payment, you get two loans and put a good down payment, and then like pay off with another loan the car.
You can sometimes do that. That's not a bad idea. In fact, we did that sort of thing for a house that we were buying.
That makes your payments cheaper though.
Well, we'll remind me of that, and we'll talk about it when we get into houses. One of the things you can do, I'll just mention it quickly, if you can get 20% for your down payment on your house, that's the best scenario because then you lose the private mortgage and PMI. PMI is called private mortgage insurance. And the mortgage insurance that you have to pay is, you don't get that back. And so we'll get into that into houses. Okay, so save that. But anyhow, this is your P, this is the R, and this is your T. But again, you can't just plug numbers in. How much is 9 months in terms of a year? Not 0.8. What you do is you got to put 9/12 in here, right? And I think that's equal to 3/4, which is equal to 0.75. So it's 3/4 of a year. So you don't want to round off, well, until your final answer because you have to remember this is money. So you're going to round off to the nearest cent always on your final answer. So in this case, we put $25,000 here. Okay, we put the interest rate. Now you want to be in the habit. What is the interest rate? You change that to a decimal immediately. 0.07. 0.07. Always move the decimal over 2 to the left this way. So the decimal would be there. You move it over 2 to the left. And then you multiply by the time. Well, in this case, it's 3/4 or it's 9/12. But I'd rather just go with the decimal equivalent, right? So I'm going to erase this and put 0.75. So basically we're using 3/4 of a year to pay this back. And now you just use the calculator. Plug these in your calculator and hopefully we all get the same answer. Okay, so 25,000 times 0.07 times 0.75. It looks like to me the interest would be $1,300, 12 cents, or excuse me, 1,312 and 50 cents. Did anyone not get that? Okay. Please trust me, half the points on the next quiz will be whether or not you can use the formula correctly and just put the numbers in your calculator. It's going to be very important you can use your calculator correctly. Make sure you can use parentheses and things like that when you need it. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, at this point I am going to pause the video. And so we did number 9 also, and now we're ready to move on to another type of problem. Okay, so that's what we got. Okay, so
Mister, did you round to the nearest 10?
we did. That's the nearest cent. Okay, so find the simple interest. Okay, now we know that there's actually 365 days a year, right? What people do sometimes is they assume that you have a 360-day year just because it's more round number. Sometimes they're doing the calculations in their head, and so sometimes they will base the simple interest on a 360-day year, and sometimes you'll have problems that tell you to base it on a 365-day year. So on the previous example, we had 11 months. But what if I have a certain number of days? Well, when you have months, you divide by 12, right? We took 11 divided by 12 because it was 11 months. Well, when you have days, you divide by 360 or 365. So let's try a problem now. I'm going to get a problem up here. Okay, so now, remember I said that the time has to be in terms of years. So if you're using your interest formula, it's equal to the principal times the rate times the time. You don't put 75 in here. That's like 75 years. And so the time always has to be presented in terms of years. Well, in this assumption, we're assuming that there's 360 days a year. We just rounded off to a nice whole number there. We know in reality it's 365. So for this problem, we will put this number in for the principal, this number in for the rate, and then we need to remember we take the 75 and we divide it by 360, because that's one year right there. Okay, it's not quite a year to be precise, but that's what we're going to use on some problems. Okay, so the numbers we want to multiply this time, please try it in your calculator, see if we all get the same answer. That's the principal. We change this to, please be quick at doing this. You're going to be good at this. What is this in decimal? 4.5% is 0.045. Okay? If you get the decimal off, you've made a huge error. Be careful. Okay, once you've done it a few times, you're going to say it's easy to do this step, but 0.045 is what you should have here. And then you should use 75 divided by 360. Okay, please try this in your calculator. If you don't get the same answer as me, we got to figure out what you're doing wrong. Okay? So I will do it also. And please do not do any rounding until the final answer. Okay, so this time I get $29, and I have to round to the nearest cent. So this is 8, 1, 2, 5. So my cents goes to here, right? Well, the 2 is not big enough to knock that out, right? So I'm just going to leave that part off there then. $29.81. Did everyone get that on their calculator? If you're not getting it, please see me for additional help. This is half the battle, is plugging the numbers in correctly. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is pause the video again, and I want you to do number 10 and 11. Number 10 and 11 on your assignment.